So this, as you know, the PSAT has changed greatly, and that's why we have our little caution sign there. And we give this talk every year as PSAT scores come out, but this year we had to completely revamp it for our January 2016 presentation because the test that the students took in October of 2015 was a brand new, completely redesigned PSAT. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding it. We're getting more questions than ever. We are here to answer your questions during the presentation today. And if you have more, you can certainly email us at any time. So first I want to say is why should you listen to us about this? And who are we? So our home office is in Cincinnati, Ohio, but we do serve students throughout the United States and actually have quite a few international clients as well. We are independent college counselors. We hear me? Somebody just said they couldn't hear me, so somebody let me know that you can. You're able. Just wait for me. Okay, can hear me.
How are you?
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's continue. So we did the test and sign out. In April of 2014, the College Board announced that they would be completely overhauling the SAT and the PSAT, and we have spent dozens of hours, myself and the next person I'm going to introduce you to, coming up with the changes to the test. The ACT underwent some slight changes in the last year, so those are changes also that we have to pay attention about. But at the heart of everything, our passion is assisting families who are in the college-bound process. And I've been in education since 1991, started out as a teacher, and started LEAP in 1999. So I've been at this for 17 years now, next month, and I'm the mom of a high school senior. So I am recently experienced with the hat on as well. So I'm coming at this from a number of different ways. So that's who we are. Even last week, actually, I was down at the University of Alabama 2 weeks ago and got a call from U.S. News and World Reports that they wanted to interview me on the PSAT because they view LEAP as national experts on ACT, SAT, and PSATs. So that article came out, I think, on the 15th. So on U.S. News and World Report. And it touches a little bit on what we're going to go really deep on tonight. So don't feel like you need to read it, but letting you know that our credentials stand up. So that's me on the left and Sherry on the right. Sherry's on our call tonight, muted, probably happily so. And I'm going to do our talking tonight. But Sherry is our ACT and SAT director, and PSAT falls under that umbrella. So she's your point of contact when you call in to ask about her making you a personalized, individualized ACT, SAT testing plan, or to sign up for one of our classes or get your questions answered. Our team also includes experienced trained teachers in the areas of English, math, and science. And we've got people who are PhDs. We have people who have been department heads at high schools, so a lot of experience. So let's look at the PSAT. So first of all, what is it? So truly is as it sounds. It is a pre-SAT. It's assessing the exact same skills but a slightly less level than the SAT. And actually, last Saturday, January the 23rd, the old SAT was given for the last time. May it rest in peace. And the new SAT will debut in March. So I talked about that before. We'll talk about that again and are posted on our College Bound blog that talk about AT versus SAT and what about that new SAT. The PAT actually doubles also. So sometimes you're going to hear it called the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, the NMSQT, and that rolls off the tongue not so easily. And we'll get into who needs to have national merit at the top of their minds as they're looking at their scores. So it's one test, doubles for both things, a practice SAT and the first qualifying piece for the National Merit Scholarship contest, essentially, is what you're doing there. virtually all 11th graders in the United States take it nationally because, honestly, the more national merit qualifiers, semifinalists and finalists any high school has in their school, it's kind of a feather in their cap. It speaks to the strength of that high school and their curriculum and the teaching that's going on there. Change, we're always keeping our eye on what the trends are in college admissions and on the college-bound journey. And a huge trend right now is where I'd say 5 years ago, it's extremely rare that we would see any high school give the PSAT to every 10th grader. We actually have many high schools giving all 10th graders at their school the PSAT. Why is this? When you have 10th graders take a PSAT and they score high, you've identified potential national merit qualifiers for high school. And when those students can prep, they're more likely then to make it to that national merit scholarship qualifying bar, which changes every year. We'll talk more about that. Their 11th grade year. But you can only qualify for national merit when you take the PSAT in your junior year. So even if you hit that qualifying score as a 9th or a 10th grader, it will not count. Some high schools are even letting some of their 9th graders now take it. So seeing a trend towards just practicing, using that as practice, and this is a growing trend that we're seeing in college admissions in the college-bound journey. We recommend that, I know I've got some 8th, 9th grade parents on the line tonight listening in and maybe listening to this recording in the future. You have a 10th grader. If your student is academically talented, so perhaps they were identified as gifted when they were in elementary school, or they're taking a lot of honors classes and maybe even some APs already. There's not a ton of APs you can take as a 10th grader, but history would be one of them. And they're well in those classes. A school doesn't give the PSAT to every 10th grader, then you should ask for your child to have the opportunity to take that in October of their 10th grade year. So everybody always says, timing-wise, when would you do that, Lisa? When would you make that ask? Really, let teachers and counselors and administrators get back to school in August and get their feet settled. And then right after Labor Day, if you approach your guidance counselor and say, are the 10th graders going to be taking the PSAT? And if the answer is no, and you have an academically talented 10th grader, then you should ask to register your 10th grader. And I've never heard anybody turned away. I know there is, a limited number of students that can test at every site, but I've never heard a high school tell somebody that they can't take it. This is the year of change. So as we go through this right now, and we're looking at your PSAT scores, because we're going to start looking at them pretty soon. And if you have them, I want you to have them out and in front of you. The scales, the percentiles, the qualifying scores are all in flux. So you really need to, somebody needs to be muted, I think. You really go ahead and make sure that you're not putting too much stock into anything as a for sure with the scores that we're looking at, because this is a whole new ball game and we're all learning this new game for sure. So why are we taking it? So it's terrific practice for your future SAT and ACT. It will help you determine, if you've taken the PSAT, it's going to help you determine whether you should focus on the ACT and or the SAT in 11th grade year. If you've also had the generosity of your school giving the Aspire test, which is a pre-ACT, we can help you compare Aspire and PSAT scores to really for sure determine if you should focus on ACT or SAT. So that's a great thing. That really helps. It will also, and I'm going to show you how tonight, this can help you with course selection for your future high school courses, and how we can determine if we're likely to qualify for national merit. See this. I get that quite a lot. So even if you're a national merit finalist, the colleges don't know that you what your score was. They simply know that it was high enough to qualify, and the qualifying score varies among every state in the United States. But no college will ever see this. This is not a score report that you can have released to the colleges. If you resume. If you did really well and on a resume you want to indicate what your scores are, that is fine, but it is never released to the colleges. Hopefully everybody has jumped over to our website and read about how to get your scores. Here's one really big change from last year and all the previous years to this year. So historically, the test was given in October, and paper reports were given to high schools in about the second week of December, and those at most schools were distributed before everybody went on winter break. This year, scores were delayed. The reason they were delayed was because this is a new test, and they didn't know they were going to scale it, so they held them back. Scores were released online to families on January the 7th, and I think most of you hopefully probably know that, but I just want to review it for anyone who doesn't. And you get those online at PSAT.org. You will create an account to access this, and in most cases, your high school used your assigned high school email address to access those. If you want more in depth with that, hop over after we get off to our LEAP website on our College Bound blog. The most recent post that I did was on how to access your scores and what to do if you can't. Paper reports are being released to the schools on January 29th, so at the end of this week. And then you will get the traditional paper report released to you probably the first or second week of February. Electronic scores were released to the schools at the beginning of January, so they've had those. So a screenshot of what the top of your paper report should look like. And so we're going to reference in most cases tonight the sample report that College Board PSAT makes available to us. And in a couple places I'm going to have a student score with a name up on the images. I will say that a lot of private college guidance, independently advising families, just kind of taking a step beyond what maybe you get with your high school guidance counselor. A lot of those families have given us their login for their College Board account, and I've looked at a ton of these already. So we're going to gather trends, and we're going to speak to some of those tonight. The scoring work. In previous years, the perfect score was a 240-point score. That's completely gone. So what we do now is there is a section called Reading Writing. It's evidence-based reading and writing, if you want me to be exact. And that section is worth between 160 and 760 points. That's then added with the math section, which is made up of two sections, a calculator section and a non-calculator section, which completely freaks students out that you expect them not to use their calculator. Those two are added together and gives us a total perfect score of 1520. So a perfect PSAT score is 1520. That's not the score that's used to determine whether you are a national merit qualifier. We address that a little bit. But perfect PSAT is 1520 now, where it was only 240 points before. So you see that we've completely changed the scale. So what scores mean? So where your PSAT score is, now are saying that we'll coordinate with what your predicted SAT score is on the redesigned SAT. That test will be first given in March. Now, they will correlate, but at this point, the SAT isn't being scaled. One of the cautions we're giving to families, we're getting a lot of questions as PSAT scores have come out. It looks like we did pretty well. Do you think that we should, instead of taking the ACT for my junior, take the SAT? Our advice for the class of 2017, this year's juniors, has been to not take the redesigned SAT because scores, number one, are going to be delayed. So those students who take the SAT in March of 2016 will not see their scores until close to June 1st. That's a delay. It doesn't give you the information that you need as a parent to determine what colleges you're looking at, what colleges you might get good scholarships at, whether you should retake the SAT, the ACT, or both. So I feel like I'm first of all, I'm very glad I have a senior. And for those of you that have juniors, Sherry, our director of ACT and SAT, she is a junior. You kind of have your handcuffs on. So that's unfortunate. But moving forward, they're saying if you got it, so this kid right here got it 860. This is the sample report. So this sample report says the total score, reading and writing plus math, is 860. That is the 20th percentile. We're going to talk in a minute about what that means. If that student would take the SAT, then their predicted SAT score is an 860. So we used to have to convert that. We no longer have to convert that. So that'll be actually nice and handy for everybody as well. Okay, let me read this thing. I'm going to break down each section. Number one, so when you're looking at your score report, over to the left-hand side is your evidence-based reading and writing score. Score of 380, so this is based on 760, is what we call a scale score. It mathematically converts your raw score, the number of questions you got correct, to a scale score. This is whole delay in your reports to you by College Board. The scores were, or the tests were taken in October, but they were not released until January because they had to figure out how they were going to convert raw to scale. And so I think they're going to be working bugs out of that, over the next year, 2 years. But for now, they're using. So 160 to 760, that is your scale score. 2 is, what is your national sample percentile? And this basically, so number 2 in this case is this student in the black box scored higher than 18% of students who took the test. That means that 82% of students who took the test scored better than this student on reading and writing. Now, on the reports, they have, this is very important, on the paper report, they have what is called the national percentile score. That's probably not your most accurate view. That indicates that your score is of all students who may have taken the test on that day. If you log on to your online College Board account, you're going to find a second percentile score. That's called user percentile score. And every person that I have looked at, their user percentile score is slightly to, maybe than you are comfortable with, lower than the national sample percentile score. Their percentile score we found, and we're relating current PSAT to previous PSATs, a more accurate percentile score. It's looking at you compared to students who are like you that have taken the test. And that's who you're being compared to, college-bound students. Well, you have to remember, and I know we have people from over the United States on the call tonight. We've got a bunch of you from Colorado. We've got some of you from Michigan. Michigan, in the past, have used the ACT as a graduation test. Both those states, Michigan did it last year, and Colorado is getting ready to, are switching over to SAT, and it's all about negotiations of money. So don't think that means the SAT is better. It's the economics of the whole thing. Why was the PSAT and the SAT changed? Because AT took over as a more popular test. This all goes back to money in our capitalist society. So what happens is, in a state like Colorado or Michigan, for instance, that are giving everybody the SAT, you have non-college-bound students in that national percentile score. The percentile score kind of moves the noise from the data and then gives you a more accurate view of students who are like you, so those college-bound students. That's really what you want to go with. So I know that can be a little disheartening. I've seen a couple of them that have only been, 1 or 2 percentage points off, but I have seen some that, 5 or 6. So keep in mind, our preference is that you would base things off of your user percentile score, which can be found in your online report. This is college and career readiness benchmark. So you're going to be scored one of 2 ways. You're in the red zone. This is an area that you need to work on, and I'm going to show you where you can find out specifically what you need to work on when we get a little deeper into our presentation. If you're yellow zone, which is very narrow, you're not quite at the benchmark. So this student, the 380 was not quite at the benchmark, but it is close to meeting the benchmark. And then once you move into the green, you're meeting or exceeding the benchmark. I do kind of college and career readiness with benchmarks. So it has forever had, not forever, but for a very long time had benchmarks. SAT brought them on a little bit later. And the data for Ohio that I'll give you is that in Ohio, only about 28% of high school students taking the ACT pass ACT college readiness benchmark in all areas. I'm referencing ACT because we have data that's not changing there because that test isn't changed. Now, do you think that more than 28% of students go to college in Ohio? Yes, they do. So if you have a student who's in the red or the yellow, I don't want you to lose heart and feel like, oh my word, we're not going to be able to go to college because we didn't meet the college readiness benchmark. That is not what that means. So it's telling you where you have more work to do. And we'll again show you specifically where you can find that out. But that because you aren't in the green that you have no hopes of going to college, whether that's on the PSAT, the SAT, or the ACT. You have more work to do to stand out to those admissions officers, but it is still within reach if that's what you want to do. So that's what's taking place in that section, that block of reading and writing over on the left. On math, so let's just superimpose the math over that, looking at the same thing. So this student, number 1, got a 480 on the scale score. That is a national percentile score of 47th percentile, so we're going to expect that to be in the lower half of the 40s. And the student at a 480 is just into the green and is on track for college readiness is what the indicator is. So that's what that data means. Okay, are being assessed. If you go a little farther down on your, and you go deeper with this again when you go online. So the paper report has basic information, and you get deep information when you log in. This tells you the different skills that are assessed. So that reading is broken down into reading and writing / language, and you've got a math test. If you go over to the right then, P has now introduced what's called Subscores, and SAT is introducing Subscores starting in March. They have never had them before. ACT has had Subscores since 2005. So again, because of economics, they're mimicking some of the ACT and they're throwing this in. I think that what you're going to see here is a lot of what the Subscores are indicating really still keep it cloudy on what they're assessing. Word context is about vocabulary. Evidence is reading. Some ideas and standard English conventions is about writing skills and grammar. Heart of algebra, I can't even believe they called it that. It seems kind of goofy, but it really is about algebraic skills. So when we get to Passport to Advanced Math, Heart of algebra is more about pre-algebra. Passport to Advanced Math is more about Algebra 1 and geometry. Problem solving and data analysis includes some chart and graph reading, things like that. I'm going to show you where you can get more information on this online as well. So that's just kind of an overview of what they're assessing. I will tell you that on the PSAT, the math stops at geometry. Most high schools in the United States, the sequence of math is pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, and calc. If you make it to calc in high school, most kids don't, but a lot do. And they assume that sequence. I know here in the Cincinnati area, we have a couple high schools that go pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, then geometry, and that can really, if you're coming from one of those high schools, and I have some of you on the line tonight that are in those high schools, that can create a, quote, false low math score because your student perhaps completed Algebra 2 as a sophomore and just now in geometry as a junior, and they've not been exposed to that deeper geometry that they get beyond figuring out, area and perimeter and things like that. So that's about as fancy as I get with math because I did not teach math. on the English and history side of things. Okay, so let's keep going through this and looking at how we can get deeper information on the skills that we need to work on. As online, anything in blue is something that's a hyperlink that you're able to click on online. So that's why I really am pushing everybody to get online and make use of the information that they have here. So here we have the benchmarks now broken down. Reading and writing are actually separated out. So in this case, the individual we're looking at is fine on reading, fine on writing, but not quite there on math. It also tells you how many questions, so that's your raw score, how many questions you missed. Look over there on math, it says there's one omitted answer. And I'm going to repeat this again because this is a change and it's a big deal for both the PSAT and the redesigned SAT. If you answered something incorrectly on the PSAT or the SAT, you lost a quarter of a raw point. And that affected your score. So we always said there should be no blind guessing on the SAT or PSAT. To suit with ACT, SAT, College Board, PSAT have eliminated that penalty, and they now only gain points for correct answers. You don't lose points for incorrect answers. Therefore, and this is not a strategy session, but a strategy for ACT, SAT, PSAT is if you have no clue what that answer is, you don't leave it blank. You put it down because maybe you blindly guessed right. So sometimes kids get in a time crunch. The proctor says, 1 minute remaining, and the student looks down and says, my word, I can't get any farther with this. And so they pick a column and go down, and maybe you'll randomly pick up a point or two. So that's one of the things that you look for is make sure that your students 0 omitted answers. As a reading looking at different reading passages and some graphics. So this is new. Previously, SAT and PSAT did not have any tables, charts, and graphs in them. They now do. Students need to expect that. The ACT has always had that in a section called Science. You have to read either the reading selection that you were given or the table, chart, and graph and pull evidence out to answer your questions. SAT has always been criticized for how it assesses vocabulary. So they have not abandoned the assessment of vocabulary, but the criticism in the past has been that they put these crazy words on there that none of us who educators are educated use in daily life. And there's been a lot of criticism around that. If you want to have some fun, you put in Google the SAT hit parade. It's the 500 most commonly occurring words on the old SAT. And you're going to find many of them to be ridiculous, and we wouldn't expect any individual really to be able to use them on a daily basis. So they're telling us now that the change that we can expect in vocabulary is going to be common college level and workplace level vocabulary that will be embedded into the passages that students have to decode. How to have really great depth and breadth of vocabulary is by reading a lot. So if your student's a non-reader, that could be a sore spot for them. However, because now the vocabulary is being assessed within a reading passage, you really can, even more so than before, use context clues to help figure out with the surrounding words what that vocabulary word means. They're going to be asked to examine hypotheses and interpret data. Again, that data could be presented as a table, chart, or graph, much like on the ACT reading section. In language, do you identify great writing? So this is where grammar is tested, and that freaks people out because where we parents had to, go ahead and diagram sentences all the time, kids do that. You don't have to know on the PSAT, SAT, or ACT the label for the parts of speech or anything like that, but you really have to use that ear and know the rules so you can pick up on errors. Because again, those grammatical errors are going to be embedded in a reading passage, and you have to determine if it's right or wrong. And the answer choice is no change is necessary because it actually is correct. they're you to improve writing that they give you, the passage. So it might be by adding a transition sentence or a good concluding sentence, or being more nice with language, things like that. So it's really your knowledge of good writing. It's on the ACT, it's a sub-score called rhetorical skills. It is on the English portion of the test. As I already indicated, the math is only going up through Algebra 1 and Geometry. And so I think the biggest change is, and kids mistake all the time of being too calculator dependent. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, parents, but our kids are heavily reliant on calculators, and there's a time and a place for calculators. But our math experts, and Sherry's one of them, because a high school math teacher herself, will tell you that kids have a tendency to use calculators when it slows them down. That they will solve more quickly without using a calculator. And the kids who have a hard time finishing math portions of the PSAT, SAT, and ACT typically are too calculator dependent. That is one of their problems. So PSAT and SAT now introduced a calculator portion where you're allowed to use it, and a non-calculator portion where you have to put away. All of this test is multiple choice, with the exception of a dozen Gridin questions, slightly smaller than a dozen on the PSAT, and I think it's like 13 or 14 questions on the SAT, I forget. But this is where you actually solve the problem and then you just write out your answer. So they're looking just for the answer, not the steps, but it's called Gridin. So calculator and Gridins are typically what throws students. You'll be able to tell on your answer sheet what your Gridin answers were, and if your kid's getting all those Gridins wrong, then that would be something they need to address. Okay, so this is where we go deeper, getting some more information. So what we see here is the question number, what the answer is. If you check mark under your answer, it means you got it right. If in red a different letter, it means you got incorrect, and that's the answer that you put down. It tells the level of difficulty, medium or challenging, if it relates to a sub-score or cross-test score. So I wouldn't worry so much about those sub-scores and cross-test scores right this second. Now, remember, you want to answer every single question. So you're looking down. If student omitted, so on our sample student, that student had omitted the one of the math questions, there would be an O. That would mean that's another clue. So you'll see what question your child omitted by looking for the O. Okay, now you go online, you're actually going to be able to, so in this case, look at math test, question number 8. The student answered A, correct C. You can go online and figure out what was question 8 asking. So you start to be able to look at the types of questions that your student is missing. This will help you in preparing for your future ACT and SAT. How do you do this? Online, this is a screenshot from online. So see how the question numbers online are blue? Because they're hyperlinked. So your blue number, it will pull up that question. So in this case, it gives you the question, it gives you the answer and explanation. If you click on blue there, then it'll give you further explanation about why is that correct, and then the level of difficulty for that question. You would use of these score reports and the information that you have online if you do not take the time to go through and figure out what you're missing. We tell people the students the same thing in our ACT and SAT classes. Unless you can do the practice, and that's helpful, but if you learn from your mistakes, you're really missing out on an opportunity to improve scores. If you look on your score reports then, this is online as well, suggest for improvement. So everything over to the left says this is what you're doing really well. You've got this down. You've nailed this. Everything over on the right goes deeper. So remember when I said, you look at something that says heart of algebra, what does that really mean? We're really going to get your information on what you need to do is here and going back and looking at the answers and explanations. So I really encourage to do that. This is something that's available only online, and this helps you. A lot of high schools are starting to go ahead and schedule next year's, and this help you make some of those determinations. The student that we had as a private college guidance student, that means we have essays and proofread applications, help them locate colleges for application, things like that. So kids that we work with really closely. And this family came to us kind of late in the game, so we didn't get a chance to advise them in their freshman, sophomore, junior year until it was like late junior year. So we put the application process. A student got rejected at Ohio State University. They did not get in, but that student got a 4.0. Why did that student get rejected at Ohio State? Ohio State came back and said, you did not take rigorous enough classes. Yes, you had a 4.0, but you took all college prep classes. You played it safe, you took no risks, and therefore we don't have a student like you. He had decent test scores, and if you based it only on test scores and GPA, you would have thought that he would have gotten in. But colleges will regulate your GPA to look only at your core courses, so only your academic courses. They look for rigor. They want to see that you are appropriately challenging yourself. That does not mean that you should take every single AP class that's available. I believe in leading a balanced life and being emotionally healthy and sane, and it is rare that I meet students that can take all AP classes. But when you're considering what you might take AP, this is one place to start. So when you log into your online account and go across the top, and about the middle section will say AP Potential. You click on that, and this chart, this is a screenshot of an actual student of ours that I went into his account. And what this does is it says 3 dots. You have a high potential to do very well on the end of course AP exam if you take a class. So this kid, art history looks like he would do very well there. However, there's no check mark in the next column, and his school does not offer art history. So while he would have done well, that's not going to be an option. If you do the 2 English language and English literature classes, both are offered at his high school. He's got 3 dots. It means that would either one of those would be a great AP level class for him to take. He looks to be very likely to do well. And when I say well, that means a 3, 4, or 5 on the AP exam that's given in May after the student has taken the course. So it's really cool. Another thing that you can do with this online that I didn't screenshot for you guys, you can put in your probable major in college, and it will tell you what courses are recommended for the college major. Then it will tell you your AP potential in those, and then it will also tell you if your high school is offering that course. Now, there are kids who just are not great PSAT test takers, and there's a student I know who's a senior, a 5th percentile on his PSAT, just didn't fit with who his teachers knew who he was as a student, with who we at LEAP knew who he was. It just didn't fit. And I said, you're probably just an ACT kid, so it's okay. When that student took the ACT, they are in 99th percentile. That's an extreme case, but it does happen. So let's say that's you. Let's say that you got these PSAT results and you're disappointed with them and feel like this is not who I am as a student. And you would not take the advice of this AP potential. So when you're picking classes for next year and the subsequent years, you glance AP potential as information, but importantly than who you were on that one day that you tested is who you are every day in class. You want to talk to your current teachers and weigh their recommendations. And you know what? And sometimes even teachers don't have the perfect answer. There's another kid I know of who is a senior that we've advised, and he was not recommended for AP Physics. And here he is, more than halfway through his senior year, and he has an A in AP Physics. physics. So you've got all the pieces of the puzzle to make the best decision for your individual child. And that's what we try to help you do at LEAP. That's what everybody, at school is trying to help you do, but you got to look at the big picture. You got to step back. You also should consider your academic success in previous classes, and when I say weigh your future goals, let's say that this student had AP potential in every subject. Those kids exist. If you want to have a balanced life, you don't take every single one of those, but if you're going into engineering, then you're going to pursue AP opportunities more so in the math and science. Just as if you're going into business in a non-math-based business, then you might want to pursue it more in English. Or if you want to be a lawyer, you're going to do a lot of writing. So, those would be things to weigh as you're using this information. So this is just one piece. You need to get rigor in. Don't play safe. If you're that family that the student has played it safe and is trying to get the 4.0, use my Ohio State story. That kid is long out of college now. But use Ohio State story to encourage students to take some risk. All times colleges, more often than not, would rather you a student have a B in an AP class than an A in a college prep class. So keep that in mind. Now, this rigor is just one piece of the factors of college admissions. We're doing a seminar. It's actually going to be a webinar like tonight, but it's going to actually be an hour and a half, a full hour and a half, on February the 16th at 7:30 Eastern Time. And one of the things we'll tell you is the way you can find out what pieces of the admission puzzle the colleges weigh more heavily. So you can register for that on our website if you'd like to join us. Okay, national merit now. That's a burning question for a lot of people on the call. So national merit can be a really great thing because we have students that LEAP has worked with that have been national merit finalists that are going to college for free. And as a mom who's getting ready to pay for college next year, that phrase is music to my ears, so I get it. The problem is historical data that we use on who probably should prep, 8th graders who got good scores who probably should prep, or 11th graders who are looking at their scores and they're wondering, do you think this is going to be high enough? We're looking at historical data that is very difficult to relate to current data. Now, the good is College Board did release to those of us who are advisors a concordance chart. When I said your 1520 total PSAT score is not the score that is used for national merit. We have a different score called selection index, and your selection index score is the one that national merit will use to determine who their qualifiers are. So, through the 2015 PSAT, and based on 240 points, the education range for a selection index was between 212 and 215. However, is not based on 240 points. The scale is based on 228 points. So you're taking, and if you go all the way back to some of my previous slides where you saw an English score, writing and language score, math score, we're using a combination of those scores. So this scale is based on 228. Qualifying score. My best guess, because it's 12 points lower, would be, well, math, LEAP has taken scores who scored at 175 and above on selection index in the 10th grade year, worked with them really hard, and got them up to qualifying scores regularly, very regularly, 175. If our scale is now 12 points lower, should we lower that threshold to 163? That's the best guess for next year. We're seeing indicators, though, of inflated selection index scores on the score reports that just came out that you have in your hands now. So let me explain that. As national merit qualification goes, and how much a student increases their score typically from 10th grade to 11th grade. Own studies in the past showed that students typically would increase their selection index score by 10.6 points from 10th grade to 11th grade if they did nothing else, no prep, all things being equal. So that's ability levels, that is students it's kids who prepped and didn't prep, but on average you could expect a 10.6 selection index increase from 10th grade to 11th grade. A large sampling now of PSAT, October 2015 PSAT test at the scores. Because you have the ability in your online score report to look at your last year's scores if you're a junior, and you took it as a sophomore, and to look at this year's scores. We're seeing jumps, 38 points on kids who are good students, but not national merit material. We are seeing jumps, 32 points for students who are college prep students who maybe only take, 1 or 2 honors classes. So it doesn't fit with the historical data. So there's going to really take a lot of time to figure this out. I know national merit is something that there's a lot of anxiety and expectation around and things like that, but we're just going to have to do a wait and see. So for our recommendation is that you go 12 points lower than the highest previous qualification score. So I used Iowa as an example. I know we have a lot of people on the line from California, out east, Florida, Colorado, Michigan. What I would recommend that you do is Google national qualifying score and then your state name. It will pull up a website that has a list of qualifying scores for previous years. Just as last year's score was, say, a 215, does not mean that that is the highest score that you've ever had. You're going to go back, I'd say go back over past 5 years. What the highest score is, deduct 12, and then that is our best guess for the selection index that you are aiming for your junior year. And remember, national merit only counts for the junior year PSAT. Painful wait because these kids, if you have a junior, your kid took the test in October of 2015, and the semifinalist will not be announced until September of 2016, fall of their senior year. Once semifinalists are announced, it is a very quick process of getting an application, getting recommendation letters. You will have to take the SAT once to get a similar score to prove that that was an outlier when you did well the first time. And then it's not until the spring of the senior year that national merit finalists are announced. There are schools like the University of Alabama that give a full ride. There are schools that give $2,500 one time, and there are schools, particularly the Ivy Leagues would go, yeah, everybody's smart, no big deal. They will give you no money for it a lot of times. So you do have to check with each school. And it changes year to year, so don't base it on what somebody else has talked about. High scores. What if you're sitting here and you're saying, I don't have a high score, I have a low score, and I'm a little bit freaked out. So there's time to improve. It is right now, if you're listening to this live, it is January. If you have a junior, you still have plenty of time. Reading and writing helps tremendously on the evidence reading and writing section. We got test prep that we offer. You need to really concentrate on taking, really rigorous courses and doing well in school and improve your status and critical thinking. But the bottom line is, like the senior that I told you about before, you may just be a far better ACT test taker. If you are looking at percentile scores that do not make sense with testing that you've had on other tests, or your student is every day in their GPA, then I think your answer is pretty clear. Focus on the ACT. We compare the PSAT and the SAT. Just wanted to break it down for you one more time. So SAT starting in March is going to be $1,600. That is a huge change. Last Saturday's SAT was based on $2,400. So we'll do more for you. We've already done a little bit on the redesigned SAT. We're going to do more for you on that. We've got that posted on our website, on the blog, as well as our YouTube channel, and our, I think we're trying to migrate everything over to Vimeo as well. So just in mind. Your SAT, which one to take? Sherry's full-time job is ACT, SAT. So if you email us at info@leaprogram.com, we will put together a free testing timeline for you and give you input on should you take the ACT, the SAT, or both, and should you take the writing test as well. So reach out to us. We do that for free for anyone in the United States, so feel free to ask us that question. This is who we are. With that, I'm going to go ahead and take any questions that we might have. The relationship between selection index percent and 212 typically represent a certain percent. Person in the past, but don't have that data right to tell you what that would be. The only that College Board has made available to schools, colleges, and college counselors is a concordance chart that takes old selection index and converts it to new selection index. So the only relationship that we're able to establish at this point with the limited amount of data. Okay, that was a good question, though. Should we be able to see a selection index score online? Yes. You actually should be able to see it on your paper report as well as online. Let me see. I have the here. Sample report. I don't think I have it right here. I've got too many. It is scroll down. So scroll down. The first data you get is data that is on that 15-20 scale. You need to scroll down a little bit, and I know it's like on the left-hand side as you scroll down, and then it will give you selection index. So, well, it as a yes. If you took it as a 10th grader, you're able to, once you get into your account, if you were registered under the same email address for your school for both 10th grade and 11th grade testing, then you'd be able to access your 10th grade scores with the same login as you had before. Receiving a lot of college letters after PSAT results. Is there an advantage to replying to those? That is a terrific question. So here happens. College Board, ACT, they both do it. They sell these names for 30 or 40 cents a name. They don't tell the colleges what your score is, but a college could say, hey, we are looking for students who live in Nevada who's, this score or higher. And then they sell them a list of names to contact. That's why you're now starting to get a lot of mail. Some colleges, and this is a trend in college admissions, those of you who live in Columbus, we're having How What Colleges Want, the latest trends in college admissions coming up in, I think, early February. There are some colleges, and we will talk about this then, and we're going to talk about it again on February the 16th in College Selection Seminar, that track what's called demonstrated interest. So demonstrated interest, you are reaching out to the college before you apply. If you never reach out to the college, and the first time that they hear of you is when you apply, you're a stealth applicant. There are some colleges that will not at all accept stealth applicants. You have to demonstrate interest ahead of time. If college reaches out to you and you're at all interested in that college, you want to figure out if they're tracking demonstrate interest. So most of the time it's going to be smaller schools or more selective schools. The University of Dayton here in Ohio will not accept anybody who hasn't demonstrated interest at a time. They like that to be in the form of a visit, but if you live too far away, you can do like a Skype talk or something like that. But that, you've got to reach out to them and show interest. You would think that really large schools, I don't want to put them into that. Ohio State does put the money into it, but another Big Ten school, University of Michigan, very closely tracks demonstrated interest. If you demonstrate interest, you are more likely to get into that school. If things are equal between you and another student and they are a stealth applicant and you've demonstrated interest, they will go with you because they know that demonstrated interest students are more likely to enroll. So we are going to teach you on February, this one of a bunch of things we're going to do, February the 16th in the college selection seminar, how you can figure out which of these letters you should reply to or not. So very good question. See, decides what scores a student gets and what scale that score is based on for national merit and finalists. So the college board decides what the scale is and what your selection index is. That is that for national merit, that national merit's only taking the top 1% of students. And that's sort of correct, but let me go one level deeper with it. So national merit qualifier should be the top 1% of students. However, it's by state. So here in Ohio, a few years, 215 has been our cutoff several times. That would be our top 1%. But in Kentucky, literally 20 minutes from where I'm sitting, their cutoff score is lower. In a state like New York or California, where it's extremely populated, they tend to have higher scores. So national merit decides what the cutoff scores are for their competition, if you will. It is supposed to be a sampling of the top 1%, but it's really 1% by state, and that cutoff varies by state. And I know we literally have like 15 states represented tonight. So I'm just saying you're going to have to Google what the more recent cutoffs have been in your state, and then if you reach out to us, we can convert that to you to this year's selection index. So we're going to do that. So that's a good question. What about something right underneath merit status called commended student status? And it's the same way. National merit will decide what that cutoff is. It's usually about 10 points. The cutoff is about 10 points lower than national merit, maybe 12 or 13. That varies by state as well. I know here in Cincinnati, we have some students because we border. We're right on the border of 3 states coming together. We live in Kentucky, but go to a private high school in Ohio. The cutoff score that you are looking for is the score for the student where goes to school, where you live, where the student goes to school. Does they get anything for commended? No, you do not. There's no money with commended. However, there are some individual like corporate scholarships students can qualify for through commended, but there are no colleges that give a full ride or $5,000 a year for commended status. It is a feather in your cap. It is something I would certainly put on your resume or your list of awards when you're doing applications, because again, they actually are going to see your PSAT score at the colleges, but that will be an indicator that you had a very high score, because you be in the top 2%, you're getting commended, and you would want them to know that. I mean, that's a positive, but it's not going to get you anything as far as money, I think is what we're talking about there. So another good question. Very good. Anybody else? Okay, we have college selection webinar coming up February the 16th. Oh, here's some else. Could you subtract 12 from the index score to determine qualifying? Guess my best. So the reason I'm saying that is perfect selection index previous years was 240. Per selection index this year is 228. That's 12 points lower. So what we're questioning is, are we going to see those national merit qualifying scores for selection index naturally coming in 12 points lower? That's our best guess. We're looking at our concordance, and if you help that, we can share the highest score your student has had. My son would kill me if I talked about his scores, perhaps meaning our lead score. We have had students in the mid to high 220s. So our highest. We every year for about 7 years now. 10 years into test prep, we started doing PSAT prep. And every year that we did it, we've had national merit finalists. SAT prep class, or is it best to take an SAT prep class for the PSAT? That's a great question. So when we at LEAP prep students for PSAT, we do not prep them for the PSAT, we prep them for the SAT. While if you're doing well on an SAT that's just a little bit more challenging, then you're going to be in great shape for the PSAT. So that's a really great question. I think somebody just took their mute off. The other thing that I would say is there is a SAT test in early October. That SAT test in early October is great practice. Somebody came off of mute, so if everybody can check themselves, that'd be great. So the SAT in early October is great practice for your PSAT, which actually is pushed later this year. I think the PSAT in 2016 is going to be November 1st, I think. It's right around then. That's 2 or 3 weeks later than it's usually been. It's always been around October 15th, so it's about 2 weeks later. And if you want another, a warm-up for that, we recommend taking the early SAT. It's usually I think this coming year is going to be the first Saturday in October as a warm-up for that. You'll actually have your scores back before you ever even take it. Do corporations get the semifinalists to grant scholarships, or do we have to find the list? The corporations actually get them. Great question. That was from Colorado. Thank you. Okay, great. If you're in Columbus, I encourage you to come out to the free How to Become What Colleges Want. It's a look at the latest trends in college admissions. We do have all of our prep classes, our online class that you can take from anywhere in the United States, our local Columbus and Cincinnati classes, online ready for registration now. Our next big event that's a webinar, so anybody can attend regardless of location, will be on February the 16th. And that is our college selection seminar. We will show you the secrets of college selection right and really stand out. So one last question as people are getting ready to get off here. You mentioned rigor. How important is National Honor Society? National Honor Society is nice. I've seen a pretty variety of who can get into National Honor Society based on the high school. So, high schools let kids in who I know don't have enough leadership to get in at other high schools. College tend to like things that can be assessed more equally. That's why they like us to report GPAs on a 4.0 scale instead of weighted scales. So if they feel at all that National Honor Society is a deal breaker, it is things like if you don't have that, then beef up somewhere else, do something else. We do resume development and resume assessment for you, so if you need help with that to figure out how you could fill any gaps, we do that as well. National Honor Society is nice. It's certainly great if you're in, but I know kids who are really great kids, super strong students who may have been focused on leadership. They're more independent, more of an introvert. and they have as many opportunities there, but they've done some really cool things in the classroom or have really great test scores. So, every college is looking for a well-rounded freshman class, and they're going to want some kids that have the leadership that you need to get into National Honor Society, and they're going to want kids who are strong test takers, but they want kids who have, great work experience. They're looking for variety as they round out what their freshman class looks like. And it's crazy going through it as a parent because I'm just almost at the other end of it now. So, hey, gosh, we had a great group show tonight, and stick with us to the very end. So I guess that's an indicator that you're getting good information. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll post this on our website if you want to send people over there to watch it. Hope to connect with you again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.